Good afternoon, friends. Come sit down. We're having a beer. I have finally got around to doing my black lager taster. This bad boy's been sitting in a bottle in my fridge for the better part of a week and a half. Probably closer to 2 weeks, to be honest. And I've just been a bit lazy. I don't know why I'm holding this like this. I'm gonna put this down. They give me the shits attached to me, so you're gonna have to deal with it. If you don't like seeing it, I'm sorry. I don't like having so much noise that I've got to use one. Anyway, black lager. Obviously, I've done so much talking about these. Jess and I cracked into a whole lot trying to kind of get an idea and gauge what I wanted to achieve. I have tried this and I've tried it a number of times. It was put down almost to the day 2 months ago. So she's been in the keg for, well over a month. And in that time, I've tried her several times. I will be honest in the fact that every time I've tried it, it has not been exactly what I'd wanted. I'm not saying that it was bad, but we'll go into that. However, each time I did try it as well, it did change. So I wanted to give it the chance to kind of condition as much as it could before I let you guys know what my thoughts are. So without further ado, let's crack into it. First of all, carbonation's quite good. I did pour it into a bottle off the tap. I have chucked a bit of CO2 in there just to kind of improve the carbonation. I think color wise, like she's looking pretty good. Head retention is not ideal. From memory, when I poured it off the tap, I didn't think it was too bad. But yeah, certainly whether it's a glass, whether it's a bottles, or perhaps it is the brew, head retention could definitely be improved. Good, mate. How are you? Honestly, my neighbours must think I look like the biggest fucking idiot. I sit here in my garage at a bar, just drinking, talking to myself. Right, so first and foremost, she is much more prominent on that coffee, I wouldn't say roast, but dark malt flavour than what I'd really hoped. I think it's still within the style though. I feel like there is such a varying range of how much dark malt flavour is accepted into these. For me, while I like it, I wanted to hit on that like heads of Noosa level of dark malt. It's there, but really balanced out with, obviously they use rice because it is a rice lager, so that probably helps. But in some of the others, I guess those pale malts, whatever their kind of base pale malt is. And yeah, I haven't achieved quite the level of that dark malt flavor that I had wanted. And then we've got that lagerness, and it's really funny to see the difference between using the 3470 in a pale lager compared to something that is dark, because that light crispness isn't as, I guess, much to the forefront as what I'd hoped. I did the exact same method as I did with the BIB lager kit. Same temp, same ferment time, same diacetyl rest process. So, ultimately I'm led to kind of believe that it's more the dark malts altering that perception. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the conclusion that I'm coming to with that one. The last thing that I'm going to criticize it for is I get this mild twang. I don't know if it's the dreaded homebrew twang. I don't know if somehow it's been a bit oxidized. I said it to Jace and he said, "What are you talking about? I ain't get no twang." is it the Hersbrucker hops? I haven't used Hersbrucker a lot. Initially, it presented kind of like winey to me. And I just, I don't have the refined palate to be able to determine between wine and twang. I'll be honest. But there is something there. Has it been slightly oxidized, or is it a little bit twangy? So the Black Rock Porter can I've never used before. Is it, am I mistaking this flavor for something that's in that? I don't know. But you can't call it an honest tasting review without being completely honest. For me, that flavor does die out pretty quickly. It's only in that first kind of couple of sips, but it is there, and I don't think that it should be. I don't know what it is, but I know that I didn't want it to be there. Look, I'm being super critical of it because I had this idea of what I wanted to make, and I haven't done it. The feedback at Crafted Taste has been really positive from what I've heard, unless they're all blowing smoke up my ass, which, oh well, thanks. I still think it's a great beer for us to showcase to people who may not necessarily be usually open to drinking dark beer. It is light. It is super sessionable. I think we're somewhere in the low to mid 4s in ABV. Look, overall, is it bad? It's not bad. I could easily polish off a couple of those. Is it good? I would say it's good. Like, I do think it's a good beer, but it's not great, and it's not as good as what I had hoped. Anyway, that's part of home brewing. I don't know if these flies piss you off as much as they piss me off. Let's pour another beer. I've got some more things to say. Just for something different. Righty. Our Nectron XPA. I've done a bit better with this head, but it did come straight off the keg. I like that. That is Queensland summer beer. Now, what we were meant to do today is compare this guy that's straight out of the keg. And do you know what? I think I'm going to have to do something with my glasses. I think it could be a glass issue because she's not retaining head. Anyway, we were meant to compare this guy off the keg to my bottled conditioned. Anyway, when I thought about doing this morning, I realized that I didn't have any of the bottle conditions beers in the fridge. So I chucked her in the freezer, and I'm like, oh, look, I'll chuck it in there for a couple of hours. Let it go cold, then I'll throw her in the fridge. I didn't, and I've basically made a beer slushy. But I have tried it. We tried it at the Home Brew Club meeting. It was scored against the boys will be like, how do you not know? We say it every time we have a meeting. But I don't know what it is. And it did all right. I think the main bit of feedback is that it just wasn't quite hoppy enough. It is a all-in Brewing Co. fresh work kit, and the suggested dry hops was 50 grams of Nectaron. I followed the recipe to a T. I think it's very drinkable, but obviously to the guidelines, it does probably need a bit more hops. I think it is really dependent on what you're wanting to achieve. I think if you want an everyday easy drinking beer, your 50 grams is fine. However, if you do want something with a bit more punch to it, then yeah, you may be looking at 100, even 150 to get to that level of hoppiness. What else that came out of that Homebrew Club meeting? Shout out to the big dog. So Jess took out the mini comp in that, and I am so proud. It was like a big sister proud moment. I think he was even more prouder of himself, though. I've watched him slave over his Nipa recipe, and he fucking smashed it. Like, he really did. It was everything that it should have been. He actually had a couple of issues and had to very quickly do another batch for the trade. it was assessed very green and still scored a smashing 43. So kudos to him. You know, at this rate, he is the better brewing sibling, which good on him. It's all he should be. And he should be really, I guess, recognized for that, because I know he put a lot of effort in. I'm hoping that he will do his own video kind of breaking down that recipe and explaining it, because a lot of time, effort, energy and research went into that one. And for those of you who are all grain brewers, it is a smashing beer to give a crack. Do you know what I'm just going to quickly do? Try this dark lager after trying. Oh, look, see, that head's better. So that looks much better, but I think it's going to retain it. I probably don't clean my glasses properly, to be fair. I got some PBW. I've heard people using that here. Might give that a crack. I tried this after drinking that and see whether I still get the twang. I'm still smelling it too, which makes me maybe think that it could be the Herzbrucker hops. Do I use Herzbrucker or do I use Hallertau? Shit. Hallertau. I don't think you can smell oxidation. Can you smell oxidation? I should have asked this at the brew club meeting. Actually, on this, let's talk about what I would do differently. Well, that's a slow death for that little fly. Serves him right. Serves him right. So just piss off. Anyway, what would I do differently? When I first was, I guess, brainstorming with Jess, he kind of said to me, mate, I don't think you're going to achieve what you want to achieve without a mini mash. Look, I think his point is actually super valid. However, this is not the channel for playing with grain. I think we've established that. We don't have to leave comments about how grain is better and that's going to get me a better beer and whatever else. I 100% agree with you on that front. This is about working with extract to get, you know, the best beer that we possibly can with the ingredients that we're using. So if you are someone who is playing around with grain, whether it be in mini mashes or full all grain, I think that you are going to be able to achieve what I want a hell of a lot easier. In saying that, that's not what I'm going to do. So what would I do differently about this one? I think body sits very well. However, would extra malt balance out that dark malt flavor a little bit more? I know BlackRock did a similar with the porter can and the extra pale unhopped malt. They might have added something else in there as well. I'd have to fact check, but I'm not going to. And I'd be interested to see what they thought about that. I would almost be inclined to do a double batch, and that's more so because I don't want to waste a can, and do half of the porter, because realistically we don't have much extracts on the market in that dark malt range that could give us this. I think a stout will take us too far. Jay suggested a dark ale potentially. You know, maybe next time I do it with a dark ale. But instead of using the dry blend of Dex and multidextrin, I would definitely be interested. Why can't I say that today? Interested to see what an unhopped extra pale malt, and I definitely would be using extra pale rather than pale, how that works at bringing down that real maltiness. In terms of yeast, I thought the 3470 absolutely slapped in the BlackRock BIB lager, and being a pale malt beer, the yeast really shines. So that is certainly what I would be brewing again. And then last of all, hops. I guess because I'm, and I'm describing it as a twang. Initially it was winey and borderline. It is still It's not full winey, like sulfury, but there is still a flavor there that, for me, the best way to articulate that is twangy. Whether that's correct or not, I'm not entirely sure. But I think that I would brew it again with no hops. Obviously, your dark lagers, a lot of them, the hops aren't there. And perhaps I've made a mistake with thinking that it needed a dry hop. It was only a finishing hop or a 25-gram bag. It was a very small amount, whatever it was. But, has that been enough to impart this flavor? I'm not sure, but part of home brewing, I think, is sometimes making things that aren't exactly how we want to. As I said, it is certainly getting smashed at Crafted Taste. We've had really good feedback. It is in the realm of what people like. It's just not where I wanted it. And I think I'm being a little bit more cynical because I am super disappointed. Another fly's going for it. Well, can confirm the flies like the black lager. One thing I'd be super interested in trying with this recipe or this style is rice malt syrup. Obviously, Heads of Noosa is a Japanese rice lager. So would that lean me more towards those flavors? But also Zach from Geelong Home Brewing, I've seen, does a number of recipes using the rice malt syrup. So I might even reach out to him and have a chat, see how he finds it and kind of how to utilize it. And perhaps I do something like the porter with an unhopped liquid malt and, 500 grams of the rice malt syrup, maybe a bit more. I don't know. I'll have a chat to Zach and we'll see. Anyway, it won't be brewed anytime soon, so there's lots of time to brainstorm and nut out with people who know a hell of a lot more than me on the suggested recipe. I know Jesse was looking at doing a Schwartz beer. I don't believe he's done it yet. So that's something else to look forward to. And realistically, I'll be getting some of that anyway. So I won't need my own black lager. But that's me. That's all I had to say today. Unfortunately, we couldn't compare the bottle conditions with keg. But we've had a good chat about the black lager. And that's certainly my focus. If you have brewed an extract black lager, I'd be super interested in hearing your thoughts, what worked for you, what didn't work for you, any recipes that you would suggest. If you want to stay up to date with what we do here, certainly subscribe to the channel. I do much more, condensed, more content on the other platforms. So my main platform is TikTok, but we also have Instagram and Facebook. That's more short form content, a little bit more craft beer content. I know some of you don't like watching the short form videos, but that's certainly where my strong point is. But that's it for me today. Any feedback, I'd love to hear it. Any suggestions? Otherwise, happy brewing. Enjoy your beers, guys.